All right, so we got 6 games left. Where we at? 7-4. 6 games left, and the Niners already had a bunch of injuries. They're starting to get guys back. They need to keep these players healthy and fresh for the stretch run. It's not exactly something the Niners have always done so well. If Kyle Shanahan were a basketball coach, he's like the kind of guy who would play his three best players 48 minutes a night. What would you what would you recommend for Kyle to get this team to January?
I think the important thing from my perspective in looking at it is how can I utilize some of my other players with very intelligent substitution patterns in the first half of the ball game in the third quarter. I go back to this last week. If I'm not mistaken, with a little over 8 minutes to go in the game, the Niners were up by 25 points. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, okay, when do you start to say, okay, I'm going to pull out a running back, for example, McCaffrey, and stick in another running back like Robinson Jr., or I'm going to get Bourne in the ball game instead of Jennings, or I'm going to get Tonjes in the game instead of Kittle for a couple of plays just to get some relief for my starters so that I don't grind them in a situation where they don't necessarily have to be on the field for every series and every snap. And I think the key is to help him in that situation is if he has specific plays that he wants to run, if those guys get into the ball game, so he can feed them a ball, get him into the flow of the game, get him into the continuity, allow him to get some reps at the same time he's getting some rest for his starters. But to be up by 25 with 8 minutes to go, and you still got your, McCaffrey out there, you've got Kittle out there, you haven't spotted them enough, as you get into this situation next Monday night, and then with the game the following Sunday, I cannot just grind down my starters.
Yeah, and it's like you're not talking about pulling Jawan Jennings and playing, some rookie Jordan Watkins who you can't trust. You're talking about pulling Jawan Jennings or Ricky Pearsall up 25 late and putting in Kendrick Bourne, who's 30, who's been a starter, who's arguably the most consistent wide receiver on the team this year. I mean, you're talking about putting in Brian Robinson Jr., who's been a starter in the league, Jake Tonjes, who was absolutely terrific while George Kittle was out. I mean, you're not talking about just giving away points. It's just preserving the older players that you need in the playoffs and finding roles for the guys who are still good on your team. You gave Demarcus Robinson a 2-year contract. You got to find a role for him.
Well, you've got to utilize your players, and you can extend the life of your starters and your quality players by utilizing your second tier, your backup players, and at the same time giving your starters relief. You're also giving experience and confidence to your backups who now are playing and to whom you're feeding the ball and allowing them to develop and further enhance their skill set.
There's an old, saying in football, is it the Jimmies and the Joes or the X's and the O's? And Kyle's very much an X's and O's kind of guy. And plays are very important, clearly. And it's a big advantage for the Niners, his playbook. But it seems like he doesn't do a good job of preserving his players. And with this longer season, 18 weeks, only one team gets a bye week, it seems like the team that's going to win doesn't necessarily have the best playbook. It's just the team with the most healthy players. And you know what? That's probably not going to be the 49ers based on, history.
Well, the important thing also is, besides having them healthy for the game, I'm always concerned about how many players Kyle has who get injured in practice. And, this time of year, I mean, you've been at this game. They've been in training camp or whatever since mid-August, late August. You've got to dial back on the intensity, and you have to have certain segments of practice where you say, okay, here's the tempo for this period, and here's what we want to achieve in this period. And then you have another period, have a break, and say, okay, now I want this period to be full speed, thud, no one goes to the ground. And then another period you have, okay, this will be at a jog through pace. We're going to pull back and not go full speed, but we're going to accomplish play polish or whatever and be proficient in our assignment, in our alignment, our execution, but it's not going to be 100% full speed. And you still can practice that way and have your players learn their assignments, learn their technique, and execute it and get the muscle memory ingrained where you want it without cracking the whip and going 100 miles an hour. And, I cannot afford soft tissue injuries at this time of year. And the other thing about which people have to be concerned, and which Kyle should be aware of, I'm sure, is that as we get into the fall, your temperatures and your climate have changed, your weather conditions have changed. As the temperatures drop, it takes longer for players to warm up. I've got to make sure they're laddered up. Also, it's easier for them to get cooled down standing around in practice. And so the important thing is to be able to keep players moving and keep them fluid and, not allow their body core to drop and they get stiff standing around. They cool down. And then when you put them back out and expect them to go full speed, bam, the rubber band snaps. And all of a sudden you got a hamstring and the guy's out for 3 weeks.
I think one of the phenomenon that's so strange that fans don't understand is how this sport, football, has gotten, safer and safer and safer throughout the years. Less practice, no two-a-days, less contact and changing the kickoff return, less concussions, all that. But yet it seems like non-contact soft tissue injuries increase. And it seems like the same thing is happening in the NBA. I mean, we saw it in the playoffs, player after player just pulling their Achilles or tearing their Achilles, trying to perform some type of basketball act. So Steve Kerr was recently asked what he thinks about this, and he said he believes wear and tear, the speed, the pace, the mileage are increasing the risk of today's players suffering soft tissue injuries. Do you feel like there's any lesson the Niners can take from that and apply to their team?
Grant, the key thing I think also that everyone fails to understand is today's athletes are bigger, stronger, more musculature structure on them. They have more weight on their bodies, less body fat. And, I think the bottom line also is that additional weight on the ligaments and the tendons over time, when you especially have such explosive actions like in basketball or in football, you're going to have more issues with injuries of that nature because the load impact and the stress you put on your joints, after a while, you're overloaded the body mass to where your ligaments and tendons just cannot handle the stress that you're putting on them with that sudden movement that you're making because you're maxing out what the body can handle.
All right, Kyle, you owe us a nickel for that. We just helped you keep your team healthy. Now let's help you beat the Carolina Panthers. We don't know if the Carolina Panthers are a playoff team. The Niners see themselves as one, and if they are going to go somewhere, they're going to have to beat teams better than Carolina. Carolina has been pretty hot recently. I mean, their quarterback threw for 450 yards against a team with a real pass rush last week. Now he gets to face the 49ers.